Welcome to Pioneers of a More Data-Driven Union, the series created by Elder Research to spotlight government leaders leveraging analytics and technology to solve complex problems for public good. Our first series is titled AI for Public Good, with multiple segments. I am Christina Ho, your host, and I'm excited to bring you another episode today. Our topic today is what can the chief data officers do to accelerate AI adoption in the federal government? I am super excited today to have David Spirk, who is the chief data officer at the Department of Defense, join me today. And after I introduce him, you'll understand why I'm so excited. Dave was appointed as the Department of Defense Chief Data Officer in June 2020. In this role, he is responsible for standing up the DoD Data Office and driving a focus on warfighter needs, data governance, and a data-ready workforce to create a strong data culture across the department. Prior to his appointment as the DoD CDO, he held a number of high-profile leadership roles in developing and implementing data and AI strategies at U.S. Special Operations Command, U.S. Special Operations Forces, Secretary of Air Force Office. He also has held senior-level position leading the intelligence operations at U.S. Central Command and other components. Dave is a former Marine who was deployed overseas numerous times and held various analytic targeting positions before receiving an honorable discharge. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Christina. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so DoD is the largest federal agency with over 700 billion in annual budget, nearly 3 million military and civilian employees, operations all over the world. You probably have the most challenging CDO job in the federal government, given the size of the agency and the scope of operation, especially when many of them involve human lives. So this is a really critical role. With your impressive background, you could do anything. So what made you decide to take on this role, and um, what do you think your past have done in preparing you for this?
Yeah, humorously, when General Tony Thomas, then the U.S. SOCOM commander, asked me to go be the first chief data officer and director of SOF AI in U.S. SOCOM's history, I think it was within my first week. He introduced me as the only guy stupid enough to show up and actually try to do it. So I think maybe a little bit of that carries into this. But in all seriousness, I didn't expect to get this position. It's extremely humbling to be given the opportunity. It was in the middle of a pandemic. I had a conversation with Deputy Secretary Norquist, and the Honorable Mr. Dana Deasy, the CIO at the time. They didn't call it an interview. They just called it a conversation. I went out on the front porch, poured a glass of wine for my wife, and said, "Don't worry, Amy. There's no way they're ever going to offer me that job." And then a little bit later, they did. About 4 weeks later, and I was honestly surprised. And I asked Dana Deasy. I said, "Dana, why me? I think there's 1,000 people that would be better for this." And what he said was it was time to make a transition from a CDO that just focused on business analytics, and it was time to go into a CDO who focused on the most important thing we have in our arsenal, which is the joint warfighter. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force, the Marine Corps, individual who's on the ground in a climate place that can be more proficient in their mission and, frankly, just get home safely to their family and loved ones if we start doing it using data to improve their ability. over.
Yeah, I could see with your own background that you actually have done that yourself. I could see why you're the perfect candidate for this job. And it sounds like you enjoy the support from senior leadership, all the way from the deputy secretary. So, what have you been focusing on since your appointment last year, and what are your current priorities?
Yeah, we've focused on a lot of the run block tackle of becoming a data centric organization. Like many industries these days, I tried to explain to our senior most leaders that we're not the Department of Defense anymore. We're a data company. And we need to culturally have that mindset if we hope to move into a place where we really can recognize moving from data informed to data driven and eventually to data led. And when I think data led, that's when I think of prescriptive analytics, applied AI at a scale that we've yet to even comprehend. I think we're still in the early stages of that journey. I don't think you can skip a stage and actually get to that masterful data led end. So we're doing a lot of the foundational work to get data informed. We've signed out memorandums on data cataloging as a requirement. Something that we didn't have. Nobody had mandated that we are going to have a federated data catalog across the department. So putting just a basic piece like that in place, and then teaching people how to do that, why it's important, how you do something like that. And I think that gets to, as we start to do some of those run block tackle type data things, it also gets down to setting conditions for a more data fluent workforce. I was in a meeting with the Deputy Secretary of Defense when General Hyten and Lieutenant General Krall gave her first briefing on Joint All-Domain Command and Control, JADC2 as it's known, and what that means for the department and the strategy. And at the end of it, she said, "Okay, does anybody have anything else to say?" And I was sitting next to General Krall. I said, "Ma'am, I think an important component of this is the data force, which isn't its own, it's not like the Space Force. It's everywhere. But to the point I made her was, I can sign out the best policies in the world. If we don't have somebody at echelon who understands why that policy is important, what it means, and then how to do something about it, even if we are providing a centralized resource for them to do that thing we're asking, we're not going to get it done." So increasing the department's skill, data fluency, at an organic level, at a foundational level, so that we can move the needle, I think is a really important thing.
Yeah, I really like the data informed, data driven, and data led. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges in moving an organization in this direction? And why do you think that the CDO role, what made the CDO role unique in addressing these challenges?
So there's a variety of ways I could answer that. I'm trying to find the best. I think the CDO role. I'll start there. I think the CDO role is really unique way to address this because everybody has data. It's as simple as that, and everybody has an opportunity to use their data in a more profound way to become more proficient and efficient at what they're doing. One of the things that we have done is we've actually used our executive analytics effort as a bit of a stalking horse to encourage that more broad change in the department. And what I mean by that is, when we first started with executive analytics, and Greg Little, our deputy CFO, and the team that started the advancing analytics capability, Advana as it's known today, they were first movers, and it took a lot of guts. It took a lot of guts from the CFO because they were going to do something that was different. And oftentimes when you do something different in a large organization, you're the person who has identified yourself as a target, and rounds start becoming inbound frequently. And Greg and the team had enough grit to just stay after it and to recognize that it was going to be imperfect at first because they were just trying to figure out how to do it. But using audit, using some of the unique CFO, I'll say scare tactics, to get the first tranche of data in, to start showing the edge of what is possible, was an early ability of ours to say, hey, see, like, imagine if we started using other types of data. What if we used personnel and readiness data next, and we started unlocking some of that? And so we were gradually able to work our way through the principal staff assistants, saying, hey, we're going to start presenting these at the Deputies Management and Action Group, the group that the Deputy Secretary of Defense herself, the vice chairman, sits at and manages the business of the department. And we're going to start presenting that live data in front of here. And you can imagine the first response was, oh, that's not the right data. I've got the figures over here in PowerPoint. Let me show them to you. But as we just didn't let up, and as we started pushing that live data decision making in discovery into those DMAGs with our senior most leaders, we were able to bring more and more people to the platform. And then the more we brought them to the platform, and the more we started using this executive analytics capability to showcase their efforts to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, to DepSec Def Hicks, what we've been able to do is to start having the PSAs who initially were reluctantly, coming in. Now they're starting to recognize the potential themselves. And so we started at the strategic level, but it's proliferating its way down now that they're inventing their own new ways to use what was just a senior most leader tool to manage each individual PSA, each individual department, each individual agency. So it's fun watching everybody go from, I'm not sure about this, to, wow, guess what I can do? And maybe there's a little competition even taking place between PSAs now. So it's been a fun journey. I've only got to be a part of for the last year, but I've known Greg and worked with Greg and the team since they started this about 3 years ago. And to watch it mature, and to watch the department mature around it has been fantastic.
Yeah, so much of what you just said resonated with me, including being the target. When I was leading the implementation of the Data Act, I was the target for many agencies. But it's really great to hear that this dashboard and showing people what's possible and focusing on giving people a vision and with the early adopters, and then later on more people come, and that I think is really the right approach. I'm really excited to hear about those progress. Um, so about AI, which areas do you think present the biggest opportunity at DoD?
If I were to start overlaying meaningful AI kind of on that continuum of data informed, data driven, data led, I think we start to see machine learning come in towards the right side of data informed, and through data driven. I think we need to make sure we don't put the cart before the horse,
Mhm.
and expect too much from Lieutenant General Mike Groen, who's doing a fantastic job as the second director of the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, and kind of figuring out what is Jake 2.0 and what is Jake 3.0 going to be, and kind of walking the department logically, with realistic expectations, into that space. As far as, and I don't want to speak for him, but areas that I've focused on when I was at SOCOM and dual hatted, were the low hanging fruit of predictive maintenance. When you start to look at the opportunity, when you look at what we did with our Night Stalkers at the 160th, and how we went from, can we get data off the bird, to now look what we can do in managing our fleet, just because we put good data management practices in place, and then brought in some algorithms to help us predict engine failure. It was a fantastic run. It showed the art of the possible, and frankly, it got our leaders inspired about the other areas that we could do. Another area that I'm excited about, was the beginning of some of our efforts in brain health, in identifying patterns in military occupational specialties, deployments, injuries, sustained training required, that would allow you on a continuum to maybe understand that there's been enough microconcussive events, even if there wasn't one big one, that we should probably pull the individual out. We should probably do some testing and ensure that we're not doing something that we couldn't remediate now and extend that individual's career and healthy retirement on their time when that's right. So I think there's some really fantastic applied AI capabilities on the health side that we'll get to in partnership with industry. But then very much it goes back to joint warfighting. I think in actually managing the battle space. We have kind of legacy and doctrinal concepts of common intel pictures and common operating pictures and what that means and how we do it and how we make decisions. Well, if we start to bring all of that into a good modern data management platform, if we start to steer those data feeds into this, we can start to unleash kind of a single pane of glass ability to start using some predictive analytics that will allow us to start to identify based on what we have as a perceived threat or a known target, whether that's kinetic or non-kinetic. We can use the artificial intelligence, the machine learning platforms to give us best courses of action within our rules of engagement, thereby executing more proficiently and efficiently, which I think is good for our service members, the non-combatants that are around us, or even just those people in a humanitarian disaster relief type scenario that need the help.
Yeah, those are great examples. So now I'm gonna ask you to look into a crystal ball.
Okay.
So do you, what do you envision like in 5 years at DoD with the AI and machine learning, in terms of the use of those to, get to some of these examples you just mentioned?
I think that if again, looking at the crystal ball with a little experience, having been a plank holder on Project Maven, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a willingness to accept failure, and an ability to recover from that lesson learned and not give up. It goes back to the Greg Little, grit comment. Um, what I think we need to do is set expectations, not of massive autonomous systems, but just hey, where can we really use robotic process automation? Where can we augment a human who's looking at full motion video 12 hours a day, and instead of having them look at one feed, have them overwatch a series of 6 models that are doing that for them. How can we improve the speed of a decision-making chain that requires a human inside it, but that can be expedited from a month, a week, a day, an hour to minutes? I think that's where really AI is going to take us in the next 5 years. I don't think we're going to be in a place where we have massive autonomous systems and swarms of autonomous drones doing crazy things that a sci-fi writer would put in a novel and scare people unrealistically. I think what it really is going to do is help us in the battle space with speed of decision, and in the same way in the boardroom with precision of decision and better understanding of offsets if decisions are made.
Yeah, DoD is so big, and your operation and scope is so large. It is unrealistic to think that something that big will happen overnight. And I know that the department has gone through many transformation. So do you think that this particular one, transformation endeavor on the data, is different from previous ones?
I, I would like to say yes. I hope. I think is the best way I'd answer that. I hope. I tell you when we knew that there was going to be a change in administration. There were a lot of people who were nervous. There were a lot of individuals who believed we were just getting up, into a walk on the data front, that we were getting ready to get into a run, and now wait, everything's going to change, because with administration change, priority changes, focus areas change. What I tried to assure as many of the people in the data community as I could was I don't think any of us is going to walk away from data. It is now a known, it is now a given that the corporation, the industry, the nation who owns their data will be able to outcompete, whoever that competition is. What I will tell you is, from a department perspective, what my gut told me was, we better hold on. I think we're going to go faster. That's absolutely what is taking place right now. Secretary Hicks, Deputy Secretary Hicks, has been a powerful, not just ally, but not just proponent, but honestly, she is pushing us hard. She's pushing us in a way I've not seen the department ever pushed on the data front. Her chief of staff, Dr. Rada Plum, having spent time at Facebook and Google before coming into this job working analytics, is unrelenting in her demands of the data community, and it's great. It is really great. On 5 May, Deputy Secretary Hicks signed out the department's first DoD data decrees. The snap in the chalk line, heretofore, we will move to an open data standard architecture, period. Analogous with some of the things that we've seen in industry, where they've said, we're not going back. We are moving forward, and these are the decrees, these are the commandments that we're going to adhere to. It's been a very powerful enabler for us, and I think it's one of those things that's going to set conditions for us to continue accelerating.
That's really great to hear. And it's exciting to hear all these momentum being built and also great leadership and strong senior leadership support. But I know the work is still hard. And there's a lot of work to do, that you have to do and lead. So that leads me to my last question that I ask every person who come on my podcast, is that innovating the government is really hard. What drives you to do such hard things?
Not to get emotional, but I could right now. It's my family. It is. It's other people's families. It's knowing that we've lost people that wouldn't have been lost if we just used our data better. We've been making decisions, and we've been comfortable making data-free decisions for too long. That's an archaic way of thinking. We've had the tools in place to do better for a long time, and so I think there's a growing, passionate and senior group of people who are not going to let us go back to that place. We never want to lose the human instinct. We want to bring the human instinct into that data-driven decision-making place. It's our responsibility to ensure that the data ecosystem is right, so that we don't have to wonder, if we did something smarter, if we did something faster and smarter, could we have saved lives? Could we have done it better? And can our families, remain safe? And it's not a trivial thing to say. The American way continue to proliferate as a beacon for other nations to see, and recognize that freedom. It's kitschy, right? Freedom isn't free. Well, it takes data, and I think we're in a place that I'm lucky to have senior leaders to allow me to at least take one more shot to move us into a more data-driven place.
Wow, Dave, thank you. I feel emotional myself, with those statements, and thank you so much for doing what you do. And I want I want to support you however I can. And thank you so much for coming and share so authentically about what's happening and what you're doing and your challenges. So I know other people here, when they hear, they're gonna really appreciate it and inspired by it. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you, Christina, for having me, and for the hard work you did in blazing a trail that allowed us to fall in and have the authorities and requirements to do what we do. You set these conditions.
Thank you.